Hello everybody, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me. As we all know, in the last decades, the verbal channel has become a rapidly growing area of research, and we made a great progress in our understandings and developments. And so it seems the right time for monitoring the reality of verbal lie detection research as well as its implications to practice. In my talk, I will present my perspective on the field while discussing three notions: search for indicators, coding, and gatekeeping. Verbal lie detection assumes that liars differ from truth tellers in their verbal behavior, making it possible to classify them by inspecting their accounts. A prime mission is therefore to search for valid and useful lie detection indicators. How to do that? First, a valid indicator should be theoretically based, meaning that we can explain why we expect this indicator to differ between liars and truth tellers. We then should stay aware to the theoretical reasoning when we apply this indicator. To illustrate, reality monitoring predicts that truth tellers provide more perceptual details than liars. The theoretical reasoning is that truth tellers perceive the event in their senses and thus are able to provide more perceptual details than liars who did not perceive the event in their senses but made it up. This RM indicator, therefore, is valid only for events that were experienced in the past. Consequently, there is no point to use the perceptual details indicator when we examine accounts that do not describe past experiences, such as intentions for future activities or descriptions of organization structures. Similarly, the verifiability approach, the VA, predicts that liars provide less verifiable details than truth tellers as a strategy. By that, the VA provides theoretical reasoning only for the verifiable details indicators. It is therefore wrong to use the VA theoretical framework for the non-verifiable details indicator. Not only that the VA cannot explain why should liars provide more non-verifiable details than truth tellers. To my knowledge, such prediction contradicts what we know about memory. Second, in order to find valid and useful indicators, we also need to consider their applicability. Would we be able, at the end of the road, to apply them in the field? In the real world, practitioners make decisions on single cases, and liars try to hamper the attempts to detect them. Thus, a applicable indicator should allow decisions on single case, and furthermore, to be resistant to countermeasures. Let's talk about richness in detail. This is a popular indicator that based on the reality monitoring approach. Does richness in detail fulfill these two conditions of theory and applicability? Not in my view. Reality monitoring is a memory rather than a deception theory. Accordingly, it deals with false memories rather than lies. Reality monitoring does not consider the intention of the liars to deceive. As such, richness in detail is based on theory, but not on the right one. Regarding applicability, as we showed in our study, richness in detail is sensitive to countermeasures and does not allow decision in single case due to individual differences in verbal style and ability. It was surprising, therefore, to see recently advices to prefer richness in detail over indicators which show better theoretical relevancy and higher applicability. Those suggestions were based on comparing effect sizes. Well, effect size is definitely a necessary condition, but not a sufficient one. It cannot guide the search for valid and useful indicators. Coding is an inherent and most important part of any verbal lie detection technique. Researchers examine and also report inter-judge reliability. High reliability indicates sufficient objectivity in judgments, which is of course important and crucial. But reliability is not enough for coding. We also need to make sure that we measure what we meant to measure in accordance with the theoretical framework of the indicator. In other words, we should make sure that our coding is valid. Validity also refers to the relevancy of the information we code. We should not code, for example, facts. This restaurant serves fresh fish. Or descriptions of habits. Every morning I eat 2 eggs. Or reasoning. I smoked because I was nervous. From my experience as reviewer and editor, and as discussed in several works, differences in coding between labs are big, which implies that its validity is questioned. This is an issue we must pay attention to and try to solve. Let's talk about automation of coding then, as several researchers suggested it as a solution to the issue I just raised. The main argument is that automatic coding is more objective. I agree. However, the problem is not objectivity, as usually labs achieve a reasonable inter-judge reliabilities. Furthermore, in one of my studies, I showed that coders achieved high reliability after short coding training. The challenge is therefore validity. To my best knowledge and understanding, there is no program that solves this problem yet. In private conversations with NLP experts, I learned that valid coding that considers context and distinguishes relevant information from facts, habits, etc. is not easy, if at all possible, to achieve. I therefore believe that we should concentrate in finding solutions for human coding, which is more achievable, and think of automation as an aid rather than a replacement. For good science in all fields, we should keep the gate. We should peer review manuscripts before publication, replicate studies, conduct meta-analysis, and write critical reviews. This is an external gatekeeping. We look after the work of others. But what about our own work? The other 2 points I have just discussed turn the focus to an internal aspect of gatekeeping, which I believe is important as much as the external one. By making sure that our suggestions are theoretically and empirically grounded, and that our coding is valid and accurate, we make better contribution to the literature, reducing the noise and confusion. Let's talk shortly about grey literature, which is unpublished studies. There is hard suggestion to include grey literature in meta-analysis. This suggestion means to reduce publication bias and provide more representative meta-analysis. Yet, one should also consider that including grey literature is bypassing the peer review process that we see as essential. In fact, we include in our meta-analysis literature that did not pass the gate, sometimes for good reasons. By that, do we fix the problem, or just replace one bias by another bias? Is bypassing the gatekeepers a good solution? Maybe a better solution is adjusting the gatekeeping procedure. So how to move forward? Beyond the obvious, to continue conducting good research, my main message is to add clarification rather than complication to the literature. To achieve that, we should try to establish mutual language and coding systems between labs, and as a group with mutual aim, to extend the discussions about our research qualities and try to solve its fundamental challenges. Sharpening our methodology and reducing the noise in literature will provide solid ground for future research and enable us to make even better progress. This will end with providing better solutions and tools for practitioners. I think this is enough. Thank you for listening.